Hello. I wanted to share some of the thinking that I used when I first quit drinking 28 years ago. It was kind of magical thinking, but when I decided to quit, um, I knew it was time. And as a person who now has been in recovery for several decades, one of the things that you understand when you first quit is there's going to be some people either that do not believe that you'll change, do not believe that you'll stick with it because many times alcoholics say one thing, stick with it for a week or two, and then revert to their previous behavior. And a lot of times you alienate family over the course of time, thinking, them believing that nothing will ever change. The support, the stigma that sometimes people in recovery go through can be a difficult barrier in order to achieve changes that a person seeking to be sober seeks. And recovery is not an easy thing. Many people think that you just quit. It's not that simple. When you're putting alcohol into your brain, you're causing a chemical change in your brain. And over the course of years, trying to change that process is not a 1 day thing. It's a 1 day at a time thing. And for me, when I quit, I've been drinking pretty heavily for close to 10 years. Um, I had alienated a fair amount of my family. They didn't think that I would have any sort of decent life. I would constantly have problems. Um, they didn't believe, I don't think, that I could change. They hoped I would, but in order for myself to change, I had to do it myself, which any person in recovery knows. It's nice to have support, it makes it easier, but ultimately it comes down to you. When I started drinking, first started drinking, um, it was only a few years after my dad passed, and I was about 7 years old. Um, my drinking didn't start till about 3 or 4 years after. My mom started dating or seeing a friend of the family who was your classic alcoholic. And in order to think that I was cool, which many kids do, is have a couple of drinks, at least back in those days, back in the late 60s, early 70s. And alcoholism wasn't viewed like it is now. And part of that was a lot of what went on with my father's death was not explained to me. The grief process for me was non-existent. And most people, well, I shouldn't even say most people, I think a lot of people can get by without all the details. Me, I'd been very close with my dad. And we did a lot of things together. We had moved a few times before his death. So I had not made a lot of school friends. Um, it was awkward because I was from a small community. Many kids had parents, and they go on family vacations and or spend Father's Day and all that kind of stuff. And I had none of that. And also, I didn't have the explanation of how the accident occurred. We had interaction with families on Father's Day. That was extremely difficult. Um, and I think once it started to hit my teens, because it was like my dad was forgotten. And for me, he was a badge of honor. He was a good man. And it hurt. And when I tried to get stories about my father, I've got very generic stories, which were irritating. Oh, he was a good man. He was always helping people out. I wanted to hear stories, and I didn't hear any of that. Well, then because that was very dysfunctional for me, and I was during the time that my mom was seeing this man in the early to mid 70s. Um, there were a lot of opportunities where him being an alcoholic, he was more than happy to enable me. And so the brain kind of rewarded me for drinking alcohol. The sugar in alcohol is like a reward, and it reacts positively to that. And a few years down the road, um, as I was starting to get interested in girls, um, and I was still very awkward, and I had someone that I was attracted to that by happenstance I had interacted with, and we spent an evening together. I allowed myself to have the wrong impression of what was going on between me and her, and verbally it was never explained to me that there wasn't anything there. And I was very naive, and and growing up in a small town, I I didn't know how to handle it, and because nothing was explained to me, um, I handled it poorly. And I was very direct in what I wanted to know, and I honestly believe that she didn't want to hurt my feelings, but she wasn't attracted to me. But in hurting my feelings, that would have freed me. In a way, a lot of times people say, that's something you should regret. Well, in reality, yes, it caused a lot more lost years because I started drinking more heavily, and my social skills did not develop as positively as they could have at that age. And I was left for a longing for an explanation. And I was asked not to call, even though all I wanted was an explanation, and she did not want to hurt my feelings. So it was like, I need this because I haven't had that, and my drinking got very much out of control. I did a lot of drinking and driving. Um, when I wasn't drinking, some of my uh, thinking was not good. I overreacted to a lot of things that I look back and reflection were not big things at all. But it was because people assumed I knew what was going on. And I did. And at the time I decided to quit drinking, I chose to use this gal as someone. I'm changing my life. I was no longer attracted to her, but I was using it to show her that I could change and that I could become a better person. And I evolved as a person. I became less centered on becoming very financially. My financial thinking was more, I want to have a life rather than I want someone to hand me an easy life, because it's through the difficulties that we learn the most things and set us up to be better people. And over the course of years, I had to change. I had to change everything that I was, as much of it as I could, and I knew it was a hard job. But I also felt like I had something to prove to a lot of people. My own family. I was 6 months sober, and that was the first inclination that I had that anybody knew what I was doing was different. My mom to this day still thinks that nothing I did was all that bad. And I chalked it up to my mom seeing the best in me, which she always has. I'm not the same guy I was when I was 19 years old. I have had a lot of very harsh and unhappy things happen to me. Uh, well, as many, since I got sober, as the 10-year period when I was an alcoholic. Learned a lot of lessons. I do a lot of reading on different aspects of recovery, head injuries, depression, because I believe they're all interrelated. And in order to understand how to change, you have to look at everything. And painstakingly, I've done that. And in many ways, it's been to my detriment, but now I'm at a point where I've resolved a lot of the answers that I need back when I was 7 years old. I'm in my mid-50s now, and only in the last 5 or 6 years have I overcome my fears and faced what I wanted to face. And I think that's made me a better man. Moving forward, I just want to make this world a better place and help people who have don't have the experience of my experience to avoid my experiences. Life is not easy. And like one of my favorite movie stars, Sylvester Stallone, says, life will knock you down and keep you down if you let it. And his character, Rocky, has been one that has been an inspiration for me. And at a certain point early in my recovery, I made a goal. George Bush, when he left the presidency, created the Points of Light Foundation. And I thought, at the time I was struggling a little bit with it, even though I had not relapsed. I thought, you know what, I'm going to give myself some basis to look at when I get discouraged, that when they overcome any difficult things, that will encourage me. And when my difficult things happen to me, I too will meet that and overcome it. And it's mostly worked true. I had 8 names. One of them is my father. And my goal was to meet all 8 of these people. And I've met 6 of them. Before I got sober, I met another one of them, Jim Valvano. His Don't Give Up speech was one about 5 years into my recovery. And I knew, we all knew at that point that Jim had a real good chance of dying, which he did. But he didn't give up until he took his last breath. And that's what people should look at. The things that we care about, we shouldn't give up. There's always an answer. May not be the one we want, but there's always an answer. Stallone's real life compared to his ascension as a movie star is very similar, except the movie star is way up here. Bob Probert was one of those. He NHL star. I was fortunate early in my recovery to meet him and explain to him that he was one of the people who inspired me to become sober. So I have Stallone, I have my dad, I have Jim Valvano, I have Probert. That's 4. Another one was when I quit drinking. I went to work for Little Caesars. Little Caesars was founded in my hometown. And I remember as a kid seeing Mike Ilitch rubber banding ads to Little Caesars on people's door handles. This is when nobody else did that. And I was about 5 years old. I asked my dad, I said, what is that guy doing? And he goes, he's just trying to make his work better. Make his, he's trying to help his business. And Mike, Mr. Ilitch, Mr. I, he ended up helping Bob when he was struggling with alcoholism. I don't believe he did everything he could. I think Bob tried Don or that, but I think in the end Bob needed to go to Chicago to change things. Sometimes changing everything is all important. For me, I went to work for Mike as a manager for 4 years. It was four of the funnest years of my life. My first time getting some real work responsibility and having fun doing it. And we did all kinds of gags. I was in my mid-20s, and people getting crazy, and just it was all kinds of fun. And during my time there, I actually wrote Mr. Ilitch and thanked him for the opportunity. And he wrote me back a personal letter. I'll never forget. I met him, and I met Probert, and I got the letter from Mr. Ilitch pretty close to the same time, within a year or so. And I got the letter. He thanked me for my. He thanked me for recovering and making a change in my life. It was absolutely awesome. At that time, Little Caesars was really hot, really starting to take off. To have someone who was, so well known and widely respected thank me and encourage me, it meant a lot. Then Kirk Gibson. Gibby was kind of I don't mind, even before I really seriously became a recovering alcoholic. I didn't have any mentors. I had uncles who would played baseball with me and my cousins and kind of show me things. It was kind of a mentor, but I had things that I was had a lot of anxiety about, that had I had someone different. Um, Detroit sports back then was really difficult. Being without a dad was difficult. School was difficult. People bullied me. I had a lot of issues going on, and at the time, the Tigers signed Kirk Gibson, and I said, "This is my guy." Just like probably when he was drafted, he was my guy. The description that GM Jimmy Devellano gave about Probert, it's like, yeah, that's my guy. When they signed Gibby, it was the same thing about 5 years earlier. And, we share the same last name. So it was kind of a Rocky Five thing when Rocky was training Tommy Gunn. You know, when he was winning, I was winning, and never forget the World Series when he hit the first of his two home runs. Before he hit the first of two home runs, I said he's going to hit one here, and it was when you're watching your teams, it's really tough and anxiety. And man, my mom said, "You're only saying that because you have the same last name." And I said, "Yeah," and he's my hero. He's somebody I admire because he was not afraid to do whatever it took to get where he needed to be. And it was amazing. There were things I noticed about moments in his career that when you love a player, whatever sport it may be, you notice little things that people don't understand. For a short time, Major League Baseball had a stat game-winning RBI. It was an RBI that put a team on front for good, for a game. For, uh, did that all the time. I knew he was doing it, but it wasn't really a stat. And he was my guy, and he did it. And that was pretty awesome. Um, Another one of my heroes was Ernie Harwell. I don't think anything more needs to be said. If you know who Ernie Harwell is, you know he had uh, faith in God, believed in doing the right thing, and people liked him. They loved him. He could be himself, and people loved him. That was my admiration of him. Uh, Mike Utley sums up. He broke his back, became paralyzed from the waist down. Um, Favorite line of all time, without a doubt. Fortunate a few years ago to meet him, and I was able to share a news story that was printed about me and how I wanted to overcome. I overcame alcoholism, and just an amazing, amazing guy. And then the last of my 8 is Joe Montana. Again, a guy that he is who he is. Just Joe, Joe Cool. He came in and he won games. He was part of Notre Dame. I love Notre Dame. God, country, Notre Dame. Have faith, have sports, and Notre Dame. Many times the scholars have a worldview of everything. How people are treated, how people are respected. And I think, unwittingly, those things helped formulate my recovery and change me as a person. And over time, it just became a habit. And it became a new habit, a positive habit compared to alcoholism. And sometimes, I think for people, it becomes too much effort to create a new habit. They're happy with what they have because alcohol, makes the pleasure center of your brain dumb. It's not bad to be unhappy every once in a while because it makes you appreciate that what you have and that what you want, and to get it in the proper way. And I think a lot of people lose that message in today's world, that be unhappy for a moment, but keep striving for what you want, because it's the struggle in getting to where you want to be that makes you better, makes the world better. You know, being handed something, people who feel that way, I can't get them. I can't. It's hard work. Sometimes the hard work, the hard work that people are trying to avoid ultimately undoes a lot of their dreams. Because it's through the struggles you find the way in which to get to where you want to be. And when you get to where you want to be, you appreciate all your efforts in getting there. Now, this has gone on for about a half an hour. I could keep going on, and I will do this again, but I wanted to do this. I thought it was important.